Hey, y'all. Welcome to Recover by Christ. It's me, Jay. And I just want to talk to you today about developing healthy habits. This is the kind of thing where it's easy to get into the weeds on. I could give you a lot of my opinion, I could give you a lot of theory. Um, but I just want to point you towards kind of the outline that we see in Scripture. The real question, I think, is how do you discern a healthy hobby from an unhealthy hobby? And it's not up to opinion. Um, I had a mentor once. We were talking, and I was like, how does the Word, the Bible, tell us how to live today when they didn't have any of these things that we have today? For example, there was not a computer. There weren't iPads. Like, what does the Bible say about screen time? What does the Bible say about, social media and all that? And I got a really strong answer. He said, the Bible doesn't tell you how to play baseball, but it does tell you who you should be when you play baseball. That was his analogy. And that really struck a chord with me. The Bible doesn't tell me like what hobbies I should have, but it does tell me who I should be when I'm engaging my hobbies. And when you think about that, you can then kind of graduate the conversation to like, okay, how do you quantify what is an unhealthy hobby and what is a healthy hobby? And for that, I actually look to John 10:10 on a personal level. Like that's what I do. And I think, the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But Jesus came to give us life abundantly. And so anything that is a byproduct of Christ, which at the end of the day, as a Christian, our whole life needs to be enveloped in that. Like my hobbies need to be byproducts of Christ. Does that mean I'm always reading my Bible and singing worship music? Honestly, no, it doesn't. You know, but what it does mean is somehow, some way, my hobby is able to give life because Jesus said, I came to give life and life abundant. And if I find that my hobbies are stealing from me or killing something inside of me or destroying a piece of me or the world around me, you know, you got to ask yourself where it's sourced at, right? And I even think like the cardinal law of all humanity is kind of obviously like Jesus says like, hey, the golden rule. I'm not saying the golden rule. The golden rule is love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, body, and soul. And the second thereof, like that, which is like it, which is love your neighbor as yourself. Those aside, I'm saying like in Genesis 1:28, we are told that our functionality is to be fruitful and multiply, and that's concrete scripture. And so when I'm thinking about hobbies, even in my hobbies, I'm to be fruitful. There's to be a multiplication factor. And so when my hobbies consist of turning down or numbing parts of me, I got to ask myself, like, okay, so I'm not being fruitful and multiplying. And what's happening when I'm numb? Usually something is being stolen from me, if I'm honest with you. Think about it like this: you play video games. When you're playing video games, you are engaged. It is fun. It's turning down the noise, it's distracting you, but nothing in the outside world is being impacted by your behavior. But yet the world around you still requires your output or your input per se. Like you're supposed to be outputting something into the environment. There are relationships that are supposed to have your input in them. My children, my wife. And so when you think about that, you have to ask yourself what is being stolen. For example, we have a toddler running around the house. He does whatever he wants um, all day. When my wife and I finally get the house cleaned up and get him to bed, there's roughly like 2 hours, and one of us is usually falling asleep during those 2 hours. If I choose to play video games as soon as my son goes to bed, it's stealing from my relationship with my wife. It's killing our connection and it's destroying our camaraderie because we're actually creating silos and coexisting more than the two becoming one as scripture says it should be. And that's not a sexual thing, it's a spiritual, mental, emotional thing. And so when I look at my hobbies, I have to ask, are things being stolen from me while I engage this hobby? Is it killing something in me or in the world around me? Is it destroying anything? And if I can answer yes or maybe to any of those, that hobby needs to get put on the chopping block of prayer. On the other hand, if I have a hobby that is giving life to something, I'm closer to a healthy hobby. For instance, I have a white collar job. I spend a lot of time at my desk, a lot of time on the computer. When I come home, I'm mentally burned out, oftentimes socially burned out, and my body is kind of restless. So, why in the world would I turn on the TV and then binge watch, you know, the newest show that I'm into or what have you? Or why would I kick on the PlayStation and just start, you know, running games of Madden or playing Call of Duty for the next 3 hours? Like, it's actually the opposite of what I need. I need to get active. My body hasn't been moving. There are general chemicals and pheromones and processes that my body needs to go through that involve being active. Like, I have as a man, I have testosterone, and when I'm sitting at a desk socializing and emails and reading these documents and stuff all day, and then I come home, my testosterone's like, bro, we got to do something, you know? And so I go run. I burn off the testosterone. And then when I come home from a run or a jog or a walk or a bike ride, I have a level of calm and peace and clarity that comes behind it. That is life giving. When I turn on the video games and ignore my family and say, I just need a minute for me, that is killing my relationships. And it's not adding anything to my life. It's just turning the volume down on my connect. What it does is it turns down the volume on how connected I am to the world around me. And that therefore makes it easier for me to hear myself and then implement my own will over a situation. And that's on a personal level. Like, I'm not attacking another person because everybody's different, right? But what is a universal truth is this concept of John 10:10, where Jesus came to give life and life abundant. And so our hobbies need to be filling us up in some way, shape, or form. My wife loves music. So for her to get out her guitar and like kind of sit down and just kind of sing and pick around on the guitar, that's a hobby. It gives life. She's a creative. When we sit down and paint, sometimes we just do that as a couple to connect. When we sit down and paint, she like comes to life. When she gets to decorate something, she comes to life. But when she has to do any tasky thing, it like shuts her down. And it's not that it shuts her down as much as like she's in work mode, right? And so we need to start discerning our hobbies based on what it's pouring into us, not what it's turning down for us. And I think that would be helpful, and I need to do that myself, you know. And hobbies, I think, in this day and age are so technology driven that I wonder if our hobbies are as healthy as we think they are. Like doing home renovation, woodwork, running, playing chess, reading a book, doing gardening, going hiking, going fishing, you know, those hobbies are all engaging and they're producing in the world around you. You're being fruitful and multiplying, going camping, you know. When my hobby involves scrolling Facebook or watching TikToks or playing Call of Duty or watching, binge watching a show, I'm not producing anything. And I think it actually is shutting down this innate desire in our heart to have a fruitfulness, and it actually, all of this reminds me of an adage from 12 step programs, which is our addictions are just a symptom. And so being drunk wasn't my problem. Being drunk was how I numbed my problem. You know, being addicted to other drugs wasn't the problem. Those were how I handled my problems. And it's the same thing with video games or TV or Facebook or TikTok. It's like the problem isn't those things. Those are how I'm handling the problem. Like, for instance, with Facebook, it's usually you're on there trying to connect with people. And the problem is that you're experiencing disconnect. So why not go find a person and go do a thing and connect? That's the hobby I'm trying to spur towards. And so if you were to ask me, like, hey, where are you trying to land this little digest today? I would ask you and myself, are you willing to develop healthy hobbies, or do you just want to keep having hobbies that help you drift, help you kind of go to sleep, if you will, spiritually? Make no mistake, we're spiritual beings. I don't care if you're a believer or not. You have a spirit, you have a soul. And if you don't tend to that, you're just killing it. And once your spirit and your soul gets so diminished that it's not alive, there's no emotion in life. There's no sense of connection to anything. There's no purpose to anything. And everything is just this meaningless collection of experiences that are rooted in hedonism. In other words, everything I'm doing is a quest to find the next thing that feels good. That's not how we're designed to live. You know, Romans 6, Paul's like, hey, that's your flesh and your spirit at war, and they're constantly at war with each other. The reality is, you've got to subdue the flesh with the spirit. And then you can enter fruits of the spirit, which are things like love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness. And so when I want to feel more joy in my life, I'm not going to do that by letting my flesh take over. When I want to have more peace in my life, I'm not going to experience that by turning the volume down and escaping my problems and just laying on the couch staring at a TV for the next 3 hours. That's not going to produce peace. What will produce peace is probably going for a run, having a moment of prayer, and telling the Lord where I'm at and what I'm struggling with about work, home, my marriage, and then entering that situation having added something to my scenario. I added a healthier chemical balance. I added the exertion of energy in a healthy way. I added this new experience of going outside in fresh air and sunlight. And so, in that, I just want to challenge you to really analyze your hobbies and ask yourself, are my hobbies life giving, or are my hobbies doorways to things that kill, steal, and destroy? Are they killing my time, destroying my relationships? Are they stealing my ambitions from me by numbing me out? I know there's a better life for you, and I want to see that life recovered by Christ. God bless.